I thought I was smarter than my boyfriend's one unbreakable rule. Now I'm blocked on everything and losing my mind. Can someone please explain this to me because I feel like I'm losing my mind? My boyfriend, Rylan, we've been together for 4 years, packed his bags and left an hour ago. The reason? Because I've been having lunch with a coworker, that's it, just lunch. Now I'm sitting in our apartment and the silence is so loud it's making my ears ring. His side of the closet is empty. His coffee mug isn't by the sink. He just said I broke the one rule we had and walked out. How can a few harmless meals completely detonate a life we built together? It doesn't make any sense, and I need someone to tell me if I'm the monster here or if he's just completely overreacted. I don't get it. Our relationship wasn't one of those dramatic high and low roller coasters. It was stable. It was comfortable like a perfectly worn-in armchair. For 4 years, Rylan was my anchor. He's a database analyst, a man who lives in a world of clean data, absolute truths, and logical progressions. His favorite saying, which he'd use for everything from a political debate to a burnt piece of toast, was, "The data doesn't lie." He's methodical, incredibly kind, and has a moral compass so rigid it could be used as a ruler. He was the one who created a color-coded spreadsheet for our finances, who researched for 3 weeks before buying a new vacuum cleaner, who always had my coffee ready in the morning, exactly how I liked it because he'd logged my preferences. I used to find it endearing, a charming contrast to my own chaotic world in public relations. He grounded me. About a year into our relationship, he told me about his parents. It wasn't a dramatic, tear-soaked confession. We were just making dinner and he told me in his usual calm, factual way why they divorced. His father hadn't had some torrid one-night stand. It was a slow burn, a death by 1,000 cuts that started with an emotional affair with a coworker. It all began with lunches. Secretive were just friends' lunches that slowly eroded the foundation of their marriage. He watched his mother fall apart for years over something his father constantly dismissed as nothing. He described how his father would lie about working late, the constant defensiveness, the gaslighting. Rylan said he tracked the decline like a project manager tracking a failing system. His mother's laughter became a rare event, family dinners ceased, and the house grew quiet and cold. When he finished the story, he put down his knife and looked at me, his eyes clearer and more serious than I'd ever seen them. "Maeve," he said, his voice level but carrying immense weight, "I can handle arguments. I can handle bad moods, stress, any of it, but I cannot do dishonesty. I can't do gray areas where loyalty is supposed to be black and white. It's a corrupting variable. It makes all the other data meaningless. That's the one thing that's non-negotiable for me." And I listened. I held his hand and told him I understood that he would never have to worry about that with me. But even as I said it, a part of me, the part that thrives in the messy, nuanced world of public relations, thought it was a little simplistic. My entire career is built on managing perceptions, on finding the positive spin, on living in the gray. I saw his trauma as a software patch he needed, a vulnerability, not the core operating system of his heart. In my mind, I was the expert on human interaction. I foolishly believed I was sophisticated enough to navigate the complexities he was too rigid to understand. I thought I knew better. It began about 6 months ago when Ellis joined the firm. He was a senior strategist brought in from a rival agency, and from day one, he was electric. I remember the first major client meeting we were in together. The client was tearing our proposal apart and the room was thick with panic. Then Ellis started talking. He didn't defend our work, he absorbed their criticism, reframed it, and sold it back to them as a brilliant, collaborative new direction. He was a verbal acrobat and I was utterly captivated. Where my colleagues saw problems, Ellis and I saw angles, narratives, opportunities. He was sharp, quick-witted, and possessed a charming cynicism that I found exhilarating. In a sea of competent but predictable minds, he was an intellectual sparring partner. The lunches started innocently enough, project brainstorming sessions that bled into the noon hour. It was just easier to grab a table at the bistro downstairs than to untangle our mess of notes in a sterile conference room. At first, the conversation was 90 work. We'd tear apart a failing campaign, rebuild it from the ground up, our words tumbling over each other in a rush of shared energy. It felt like a drug, a professional high I hadn't realized I was missing. But over the next few months, the nature of those lunches began to shift. The ratio of work to personal talk slowly inverted. I remember the specific lunch it turned. We just landed a difficult account, and instead of dissecting the win, he leaned back, looked at me, and said, "Enough about that. Tell me what makes Maeve tick outside of this office." He told me about his recent, messy divorce, not with self-pity, but with a kind of analytical detachment I found fascinating. I, in turn, found myself talking about my own career ambitions, my frustrations with our less inspired colleagues, things I never bothered Rylan with. Why would I? Trying to explain the thrill of a successful pitch to him was like trying to describe color to someone who only sees in spreadsheets. He'd listen patiently, nod, and say, "That's great, honey," but he didn't get it. Ellis did. We were creating a bubble, a two-person club with its own private jokes and shared grievances. Soon there were little rituals. The corner booth at the bistro was our table. He knew my coffee order by heart. I knew he'd always steal a fry off my plate. There were moments, a hand brushing mine as we reached for the salt, a lingering look across the table after a particularly sharp joke, the way he'd text me an article late at night with the note, "This made me think of you," that sent a flicker of warning through my system. But I extinguished it every time with a torrent of rationalizations. "This is just networking," I'd tell myself. "Ellis is an important professional contact." Rylan wouldn't get it, I'd reason, picturing his earnest, loving face trying to follow the intricate office politics I was describing. This is a part of my life he just can't share. The most dangerous lie was the one I told myself about my own capabilities. I was Maeve, a director at one of the top PR firms in the city. I managed crises for a living. I could certainly manage a friendship. I saw myself as a sophisticated operator, someone who understood the nuances of human relationships far better than Rylan with his rigid, binary worldview. I wasn't going to sleep with Ellis. I wasn't in love with him. Therefore, in my mind, no rules were being broken. I was in complete control. This confidence made the deceit easy. The lunches, which had become a weekly, sometimes twice weekly ritual, were never mentioned at home. If Rylan asked what I did for lunch, I'd give a vague, technically true answer. Grabbed a sandwich with some people from work. I started paying for our lunches in cash to avoid a paper trail. I'd delete our text threads at the end of each day. These weren't panicked actions, they were strategic, the same way I'd advise a client to control a narrative. He never pressed. Why would he? He trusted me. He trusted the data I was feeding him, and every time I got away with the small lie, the arrogance grew. I had built a perfect firewalled system. My comfortable, stable life with Rylan here, my stimulating, sharp-edged professional life there, and I was the brilliant, untouchable administrator of both. The end didn't come with a dramatic confrontation, no screaming match or tearful accusations. It was far quieter and far more devastating. I was on the couch, scrolling through my phone, and Rylan was in the kitchen making tea. It was a Tuesday night, utterly ordinary. He came over and sat beside me, placing my mug on the coaster. I was distracted, smiling at a text that had just come through. "Who's Ellis?" he asked. His voice was so calm, so devoid of emotion, that it took me a second to register the question. I looked up from my phone. He wasn't looking at me, but at the screen. The text was from Ellis, a callback to a joke we'd made at lunch about a particularly terrible client pitch. "Bet the synergy is still giving you nightmares. Drink soon to erase the memory." My blood ran cold. I immediately went on the defensive, my PR brain kicking into high gear. "He's just a colleague. We were laughing about a stupid meeting today." Rylan just nodded slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't demand to see my phone. He just said, "Okay. Can we talk for a minute?" He asked me to sit at the dining table. He went to his study and came back with a small, leather-bound notebook. He opened it and my stomach plummeted. It was his personal log, the place he tracked everything from investment ideas to fitness goals. He calmly, methodically laid out the data. "On October 12th, he began, his voice flat, "you told me you were working through lunch at your desk. But our credit card statement shows a $48 charge at the Gilded Spoon, the bistro near your office. On October 25th, you said you were in a late meeting, but your location sharing, which you forgot to turn off, showed you were at a bar 2 blocks away until 8 p.m. There are 7 other instances like this over the past 3 months. It's not the lunches, Maeve," he said, finally looking at me. And for the first time, I saw the immense, crushing weight of his disappointment. "It's the lies. You've been actively deceiving me. You know what my one single boundary is, you know the history, and you chose to disrespect it again and again. You chose to hide things from me. That tells me everything I need to know." He closed the notebook. "I can't build a future on corrupted data. I can't live with someone I can't trust to be honest about the small things, because it means I can't trust them on the big things. I'm tired, Maeve. I'm just so tired of wondering." As the finality of his words settled in the air, my carefully constructed world began to fracture. The calm, rational part of my brain shut down, and the panicked, cornered animal took over. My first instinct wasn't remorse, it was damage control. I tried to deploy the arsenal of techniques that had made me so successful in my career. "You're being ridiculous," the words flew out of my mouth, sharp and defensive. "You're blowing this completely out of proportion. They were just lunches, Rylan, networking." "My God, you checked our credit card statements? That's insane. You sound like a paranoid accountant, not my partner." I tried to flip the narrative, to minimize his feelings and magnify his methods, to make him the unreasonable one. It was a tactic that had worked 1,000 times with difficult clients. But Rylan wasn't a client. He didn't engage, he didn't rise to the bait. He just watched me, and the disappointment in his eyes deepened into a kind of weary resignation. It was as if he was watching a predictable simulation run its course, and my outburst was just another data point confirming his conclusion. "It's already too late for this, Maeve," he said, his voice quiet but firm. He stood up and walked towards our bedroom. That's when the true, gut-wrenching panic hit me. I followed him, my voice rising in pitch, the carefully constructed arguments dissolving into raw pleading. "What do you mean too late? We can talk about this. I'll stop having lunch with him, okay? I'll never speak to him again outside of work, I promise." It meant nothing. He was already pulling a suitcase from the top of the closet. He moved with a methodical, unhurried efficiency that terrified me. There was no rage, no slamming of drawers. Each item he packed, a stack of neatly folded shirts, his toiletries, the worn-out sweater he loved, was a deliberate, calculated action. It was the movement of a man who had already made his decision long before this conversation ever started. I started to cry then, ugly, desperate sobs. I grabbed his arm. "Please, Rylan, don't do this. Look at me. I'm sorry. I was stupid, I was arrogant, but I love you. Doesn't that count for anything? 4 years gone just like that?" He stopped packing for a moment and looked at me, his face a mask of sorrow. "I believe that you think you love me," he said, and the distinction was a blade in my gut. "But love isn't a feeling, Maeve, it's a series of choices. And for months, you've been choosing to deceive me. You chose to prioritize the thrill of a secret over the security of our trust. Love isn't enough to fix a foundation of lies. I can't go back to second-guessing, to feeling like a fool. I won't." He gently removed my hand from his arm and continued packing. Within 2 hours, he was done. All his things were gone. The bathroom counter looked naked without his shaving kit. The bookshelf had gaping holes where his favorite sci-fi novels used to be. The ugly painting his sister made him, the one I always joked about, was gone from the wall. He had erased himself. He walked to the door, suitcase in hand. I was a wreck, leaning against the doorframe, pleading, making promises I should have kept months ago. He paused at the door, his hand on the knob. "Goodbye, Maeve." And then he was gone. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the cavernous silence of the apartment. I stood there for a full minute, unable to move. Then I rushed to my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I tried to call him. The call went straight to voicemail. I sent a frantic barrage of texts. "I'm so sorry. Please come back. We can fix this. I'll do anything." A single, sterile notification popped up under each one. "Not delivered." A cold dread washed over me as I realized he had already blocked my number. He hadn't just left, he had surgically excised me from his life. The next morning, after a night of staring at the ceiling, I called Olivia. She's been my best friend since college, but she and Rylan had also become close. She was our emergency contact, the executor of our hypothetical joint will, the one person who existed in the dead center of our Venn diagram. I poured out the story, carefully editing it to cast myself in the most favorable light. I emphasized the platonic nature of the lunches, framed Ryland's data gathering as obsessive, and painted his departure as a cold, unfeeling overreaction. I needed her to validate me. I needed her to say, "He's crazy, he'll be back." She didn't. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle, but the words were like stones. "Maeve," she said slowly, "I love you, but you need to hear this, you knew. You've always known what his one hard line was. We've joked about it. You called him Mr. Black and White. This wasn't some hidden rule you stumbled over in the dark. It was a bright, flashing neon sign, and you tap danced right under it for months." I started to protest, but she cut me off. "This isn't about Ellis or about lunch." Ryland told me once, after his dad's funeral, that the affairs didn't destroy his family. The lying did. He said it makes you feel like you're going crazy in your own home. Maeve, you made him feel like that. You played with his deepest trauma because you thought you were smart enough to get away with it. You weren't protecting his feelings. You were protecting your little secret. Her words didn't just sting, they stripped away all my carefully constructed defenses. She wasn't taking his side. She was just reflecting the ugly, undeniable truths. The call ended with a quiet, "I'm here for you, but you need to be honest with yourself about what you did." I hung up feeling more alone than ever. For the next few days, I wandered the apartment like a ghost, tidying things that were already tidy, trying to impose order on my internal chaos. While cleaning out the shared home office, I reached for a stack of papers on Ryland's old desk and knocked over a pen holder. Underneath it was a thin, black moleskin notebook I'd never seen before. His personal one, not the one he'd shown me. My hands trembled as I opened it. It wasn't a log of my misdeeds. It was a plan. Pages and pages of detailed, handwritten notes for our upcoming anniversary. He'd been planning a surprise trip to Vermont. He had researched hiking trails, booked a cabin with a fireplace, and even made a reservation at a renowned farm-to-table restaurant. The confirmation email for that dinner, printed out and tucked into a page, was for the Saturday after he left. Lower down on the page, in his neat, analytical script, he'd written a list under the heading Things Maeve Loves. Morning Sun, old bookstores, apple cider donuts, the smell of pine. It was a blueprint of his love for me, methodical and thoughtful. And seeing the tangible proof of the future he was still building while I was busy lying to his face, was what finally, completely broke me. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching the notebook to my chest, and I wailed. It wasn't just for him or for us. It was for my own staggering, unforgivable foolishness. It's been a month now. The deafening silence in the apartment has dulled to a constant, low hum of absence. Rylan remains a digital ghost, blocked on my phone, my social media, everything. He has not reached out once. He exists only in the spaces he used to occupy. My life has become a pathetic exercise in digital archaeology. I can't see his profiles, but I can see the profiles of our mutual friends, so I stalk them. Every day I scroll through Olivia's Instagram stories, my heart pounding in my chest, hoping for a glimpse. I check the LinkedIn profiles of his colleagues, looking for any update, any sign of life. It's a sick, obsessive ritual. I'm a detective investigating the crime I committed, searching for clues about the victim's new life. Last night I found what I was looking for. Olivia posted a picture from a casual get-together at a brewery. It was a group shot, a dozen smiling faces, and there in the back was Rylan. He was holding a beer, laughing at something someone off camera had said. He wasn't with another woman, he wasn't doing anything dramatic, he just looked fine, peaceful even. The crushing weight of my betrayal, which I still carry every second of every day, was nowhere to be seen on his face. He looked lighter without me. I've been staring at that photo for hours. I zoom in on his face, on the crinkles around his eyes, on the genuine, unburdened curve of his smile. Each pixel is a tiny dagger. He's moving on. His data set has been scrubbed of the corrupting variable, and his system is running smoothly again. Meanwhile, I'm trapped here, in the wreckage I created, endlessly refreshing a screen, hoping for another glimpse of a life I am no longer a part of. This is my hell, a digital window into the world I lost, a world that is doing just fine without me.